welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank. Tonight, we're going to be doing a movie review of Jesus Revolution. That's right, the origins of the founding of Calvary Chapel out of, what is it? I think it's Orange County, California, somewhere in California out there. That was my neck of the woods, born and raised in LA, so I have a little familiarity with it, plus the fact that my wife came from Calvary Chapel before she converted to the Catholic faith. And so I found this movie kind of curious. And I remember when it first making its ways, when it first was introduced out, I think in the theaters, everybody was talking about, oh, Jesus Revolution. Yeah. What a great movie. What a great film. And I'm like, okay, well, listen, first of all, it's Protestantism, right? And that's all I'm gonna say about that for now. Second of all, I'll wait for it to come out on DVD, okay, or pay-per-view and things like that. And apparently it came out on Netflix yesterday. And I'm like, okay, let's take a crack at this thing. And I start watching it. And apparently the founding of Calvary Chapel is founded upon a gentleman by the name of Chuck Smith, who it looks like in the movie is the pastor of an old line Protestant church that's dying, right? He goes to his service. He's got his little auditorium building, right? With a bunch of pews there, and there's about maybe 10, 11 people in there, and the church is dead, and there's nobody showing up, and it's struggling along like a lot of Protestant churches do, right? And then, you know, he's getting arguments with his daughter rejecting the Christian faith or the Protestant faith, whatever you want to call it. And one day, as she storms out of the house, she's driving down the street, she sees this hippie guy with a walking stick that's got a big mural of Jesus painted on the back of a cape. And she pulls over, and the guy actually looks like Jesus. And this is the guy they call Lonnie Frisbee, his name is. And he is the hippie sort of prophet that she would bring back to Chuck Smith, back to her father's house. And here would start this strange relationship between this old line Protestant minister and the new hippie coming from San Francisco with healing powers, right? Kind of a thing. And they invite Lonnie over to the dead church, but Lonnie invites a few friends over, a few more hippies over. They bring in the hippie rock band, and before you know it, Chuck Smith's new church is rocking and rolling. We got a church full of hippies now all of a sudden. And what is interesting is that at least I didn't notice any real theological distinctions between the old church that Chuck Smith was kind of running and the new church, other than you had this Messiah-like prophet that was a hippie that brought in the rock band into the church. And the combination of this prophet with healing powers along with the rock band started bringing all kinds of people into the church. They go down to the Byron's Cove and they start baptizing people, and people effectively start coming in from all over the world because there has been a renewed gospel, a regenerated spirit within this church that has brought people all around the world, a lot of them hippies, but they claim a lot of them were not hippies. And here comes this Jesus Revolution. And by the end of the movie, you got this massive Protestant church empire that's led by Chuck Smith. Eventually, that's where they find a guy named Greg Laurie, who had a troubled past, who becomes pastor. And Greg Laurie now is sort of the main pastor that presides over, I guess, the national church, if you want to call it that, where millions upon millions of people have been brought in. Apparently, Calvary Chapel in its history, which they called the Jesus Revolution at the time, brought in hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, they claim. And they were baptized. They brought them to the faith. And at the end of the movie, they say some historians have called it the greatest revival in the history of America, the greatest Christian revival in the history of America. And hence, everybody's being saved, and Calvary Chapel has brought this revolution to America, bringing Jesus Christ to America, okay? I just given you the nutshell story behind Jesus Revolution. Now, I have a few takes on it because I wasn't overly impressed with the script. First of all, you have who's the guy from Cheers, Fraser, right? Was that Chelsea Grammer? Is that his name, right? Something like that. I forgot his name now. But the guy from Cheers plays Chuck Smith originally in the movie, and he does all right. I like him as an actor, but the script itself to me it kind of drags on, and you're dealing with lots of hippie stuff at the time. And what the movie winds up showing, in my opinion, is something that I think a lot of people won't see, that I kind of notice here, because you guys know I study culture, society, politics from an integralist point of view, right? And I think this is what's missed, and what the movie actually proves more than anything else in regards to an unintended consequence of the movie. What you effectively have here is a residual effect of Protestantism breaking down in America. And the Chuck Smith church, the one that's dying off, effectively depicted as an old line, mainline Protestant church that people have broken away from. Because remember, Protestants are in a constant state of schism. Even evangelicals will tell you something like there's a 70% turnover rate in evangelical churches within 3 years, which means people are not staying longer than 3 years in evangelical churches. And why would you stay in a church when you could proclaim yourself your own personal theologian and create your own church in your basement? Why stay at a Protestant church? That's just the sheer effect of how Protestantism is structured, right? But what it highlights is that we have a broken America. And what they appeal to, and in some ways I give Calvary Chapel a lot of credit here, they appeal to the disfranchised sectors of our society. Because like I said before, America being a Protestant nation, and the moral degeneration that happens in America pretty much early on, pretty much starts happening after the Industrial Revolution, and as mass transit, as mass communication is improved, and we're coming into the modern age, you can't stop Protestants from engaging in this moral depravity, right? Especially when you have a doctrine like sola fide that basically says you have an act of faith and you're saved, and the standards are watered down. It's a natural effect that people will begin to wander away from the faith and eventually create a religion of their own that accommodates their fallen nature, right? And this is what we effectively have, is we have a bunch of broken kids at that point in the 60s. They're smoking drugs, having sex. They're coming from broken Protestant families for the most part. Sure, there might have been a few Catholics that got caught up in there, but this is Protestant America now. All right, this is Italy in 1930s or something like that. This is Protestant America now, right? And these kids are broken. They're coming from broken homes. They're lost. They're confused. There's not a consistent message within Protestantism. It's a broken, fragmented, schismatic belief in Christ. And with that, we see now 2, 3, 4, 5 generations of Protestantism driving its own children away. It goes back again to the idea of the perpetual revolution that I always talk about. Once you find an ideology based upon revolution, and every individual is unleashed with their individual conscience as the supreme authority, who is there to tell the individual when the revolution is over? Who has that authority? Nobody. And a Protestant ideology that is unleashed with the individual conscience of Martin Luther, who concocts a theological belief to rebel against the church, it translates into the political realm during the Enlightenment, where we have more revolution in the name of individual conscience. This is what's playing out in America. The movie highlights everything wrong with Protestantism. So what do you do now if you're a Protestant? What do you do now? Your kids are all broken. They're smoking drugs, having sex. It's all broken in the 60s. At this point, when now Protestantism has to reinvent themselves and find a new gimmick in order to get butts back into the pews, right? And here come the rock bands. bum ba bum ba bum ba ba, right? Rock bands, right? So now we take another piece of Americana kind of thing, which is rock music, which is appealing sort of as a secular genre in our society that's eventually going to start to break down society in another way, but we simply Christianize it and bring it into the fold in order to bring people back into put butts back in the pews. And that's fine. I understand some of that music is very attractive. I understand it's appealing to young kids in a lot of ways. I get it. But is that really worship? All you've taken is a byproduct of the culture and try to Christianize it. You're packaging and selling entertainment now, not necessarily worship. And this is the fundamental problem of, again, Calvary Chapel and a lot of these evangelical churches, and eventually why it dies out. Because it's not true faith. It's not true religion at the end of the day. Sure, they may get some things right. I think when you read the Bible, there are graces there. And I think in a limited capacity, Calvary Chapel and churches like that have done some decent things, right? And I will say this, reaching out to the marginalized, the disfranchised is a good thing. I think they do a pretty good job of it. But again, it was Protestantism, in my opinion, that created this disfranchisement in the first place in the name of the supreme individual, right? Because it's like I said to you before, I come at it from a unique perspective. In Sicily, right? In Sicily, where my family was from, my father reborn 1935, there wasn't a sexual revolution over there, because the church had its grounding over there. It didn't have to reinvent itself. Catholicism simply taught the wisdom, the ancient teachings with the sacraments in place. And a sexual revolution did not happen in Sicily. Happened other parts of Europe where the French Revolution swept in, yes, but not where I came from. I got none of the sexual revolution in my house, none of it at all. And my parents were boomers. They were 60s generation. My parents got married, I think it was 1968. They came to America in 63. So they got the full scope of that American liberal revolution. Kiss my ass. I'm an American. You can't tell me what to do. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. They got it all. And yet that was completely rejected because they came from a part of the world where the faith was strong. The problems we have in the church today are actually a byproduct from breaking away from orthodoxy and trying to accommodate the world, which is what Calvary Chapel is trying to do here, right? It's watering down the historical tenets of Protestantism, right, in order to accommodate those broken historical tenets, right? Because the moment you get religious liberty enshrined in the Constitution of the United States, you begin to see all these fragmented versions of Protestantism pop up in America all over the place, and all these massive contradictions in this religion we call Christianity, right? Is it one Christian God that unifies us in customs, cultures, theology, religious beliefs, morality? No, it's not. Jesus Christ in America is a polytheistic God under the dictates of Protestantism. This is what leads to the confusion and the disaster of Protestantism later on, and why they always have to continually reinvent themselves and introduce novel ideas like rock and roll to get people back in the seats. So by the end of this movie you're watching, you're like, okay, where's the spirituality in this? Where? What was the basis of the relation with Christ? There was no imagery of Christ in the movie. In fact, the only imagery of Christ you kind of have is the Lonnie figure that kind of looks like Jesus Christ. They make him look like Jesus Christ. There's no icons. There's no veneration. There's no imagery of our Lord. I mean, maybe there was a flash of Jesus, but because Calvary Chapel is anti-iconoclastic, they don't show any imageries of anything. There's nothing inspiring. What it becomes is this talk about the Bible and Jesus. And Jesus almost comes off to me as a kind of a conscience on your shoulder, kind of like a Jiminy Cricket kind of a character that's on your shoulder. The term Jesus is thrown around a lot in the movie, but without any substance, only as an imaginary friend or character. Here's my Bible. We're all going to read the Bible, but they really, in the movie, don't take on any theological notions as to why people will come to the faith. They just learn to rebrand Protestantism in a new way, where they reached out to people that were broken. Okay, again, I went through that. They gave them lots of hugs, right? They had rock band music. They were a welcoming community. People that were homeless, they found a home for. They gave them comforts. They gave them a place to live. I mean, they were really more of a community outreach mixed in with sola scriptura is what it was. And so that's what I saw in the movie. I personally did not find it inspirational at all. I think it's, again, the way I see it as an integralist, it's Protestant America watching its Christian faith, its Protestant faith break down, and then Protestant churches trying to figure out, okay, how do we pull them back in? What kind of trick? What kind of maneuver? What kind of, sales pitch can we get them to come back to the church? Now, mind you, after they've been broken in this liberal society, which has been fostered originally by Protestantism. So I just don't understand it. I guess, I don't know, I'm an integralist. I view things a little bit different than most people, but that's what I saw. I saw a film that was actually dead in faith, dead in spirituality. It didn't present me with any real challenges or any real ideas. It didn't touch my soul in any kind of way. I gave it a fair chance. I thought the movie was relatively boring, to be honest with you. I was ready to turn it off about, honestly, half an hour, 45 minutes into it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, kind of on the internet and things of that nature, who had watched it. She goes, Frank, this movie's not going to get any better as you watch it. I'm like, yeah, okay. But I want to see how it ends here. I'm going to give it a shot. I want to give it a fair shot. I watched it. I'm sorry, guys. I wasn't impressed with it. I thought it was, in terms of theology and spirituality and bringing people to Christ, I thought the message was weak. I thought it was just one giant community outreach is what it was to an already broken liberal society. I guarantee you most of those people already left. They're probably within the realm of that community. As soon as somebody gets married or gets a career or moves on with life, whatever it may be, those churches are already starting to empty out. This is why evangelicals have to constantly evangelize, right? That's not to say we don't have problems in the Catholic Church, but the problems of the Catholic Church are of a different nature because we're a worldwide organization that were purposely targeted by Freemasonry and communism. It's of a different nature completely. Here we see a byproduct of American religious liberty and the religious liberty that Protestantism gave us ultimately at the end of the day and the failures of Protestantism. So I'm not impressed. 1 out of 5 stars, I guess you want to give it a rating when it comes to the Jesus Revolution. I don't know. I didn't get the craze, right? I didn't get the craze over it. Maybe Protestants love it for whatever shallow reason, and I can understand that. But listen, when you compare it to a movie like Nefarious, and that's probably the movie for you I should have done. Nefarious was awesome. I mean, it was deep. It was done by traditionalist Catholics. It was deep theologically, deep spiritually. It touched you emotionally. It made you think about the faith. It made you think about Christ. It also made you think about the devil. It made you think, am I serious here? It was deep. There was substance in it. It was beautifully done. And so that I actually loved. Me and my wife were both drawn in by that. I gave that a 5 out of 5 stars. That's my short review on Nefarious. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's my review on the Jesus Revolution. I'm your host, Frank. I want to thank you for joining me again. I'm going to sign off for now. I'll talk to you soon. Good night, everybody.